Hi there and welcome to the Leadership Course. My name is Anoop Vaghani from WinThink, and today we're here to talk about influencing outcomes and relationships, and we're very fortunate today to be joined by Zana Ballantyne from Grow Leadership, who's going to take us through a good part of this session today. So how are you, Zana, and welcome.
Thanks, Anoop. I'm great.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about why. Why is it important that leaders learn how to influence?
Yeah, good question, and something many leaders ask themselves actually. So let me ask you a question first.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself in a situation where others don't quite understand what it is that you're trying to communicate?
Unfortunately, I do, yeah.
The messages just aren't quite getting through.
Yes.
Yeah, and if like me, you may find that frustrating, time wasting.
Yes.
Yeah, at times disrespectful, unproductive.
All of these things, especially I can relate to the time wasting and frustrating when you think you've said something clearly, but it obviously hasn't been received that way.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine if you had some skills and knowledge and some couple of little techniques to take all this away, to overcome this and to make sure that your messages are clearly communicated, they're understood, they're received in the way that you meant them to be received. You would feel motivated, engaged, empowered, supported, a lot more productive with your time. Definitely
feel a lot more effective and productive. So what kind of techniques are we talking about? What are we looking at achieving here?
Good question as well. It's quite simple. It's about awareness. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a quick example that I recently recently had with a client of mine. So a client was telling me about this situation where they're in a team meeting and the manager walked into the team meeting late on their phone. Familiar?
I've seen that a few times, yes. Yeah. Dare I say I've probably done it a couple of times too.
Grabs a seat, says nothing, doesn't involve themselves, but are potentially very busy doing something else apart from being participative in the meeting. Then says, right, so what are we doing? Who's doing that? Who's going to take care of that?
Yeah.
Quite directive, so to speak. Yeah. So this may suit many people.
Yeah.
They're like, great, the manager's come in, they're going to get the job done, they're going to pull this meeting to an end, it's wasting our time potentially anyway. Who needs to hear everyone's voices? However, this may not suit and be the best way to communicate some other styles.
Okay, so when you say awareness in that situation, what are we encouraging there? Awareness of what?
Awareness of their own behaviour and the impact it has on other people.
Right. Okay, so that's the key techniques then that we're looking at today. So how to build awareness around our own behaviours and the impact that that has.
Yeah, definitely. There's a bit more to it because once you have the awareness, the next step is to understand other people's behaviour preferences, how they prefer to behave.
Right.
You may ask why we need to understand theirs.
Yes, why do I need to understand theirs, Zana?
The third step and the final is to be able to flex and adapt your style to better meet the other person's communication preference.
Right. So I've come across this concept before, and sometimes I hear people say, well, why should I be the one to adapt my style?
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you normally say to that?
I'm not the problem, it's theirs. That's what people say.
Why can't they be more effective? Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, my parenting self wants to say you're responsible for your own behaviour, not for the behaviour of others.
True.
But secondly, if you're looking to if you're looking to influence outcomes and maintain and build those relationships, then you need to flex your behaviour.
Right. Okay. So back to that word influence. If I want to be more influential, if I'm more adaptable, then I can be ideally more influential.
Definitely.
All right. So what are we going to look at to do this?
So something I've used with other clients and some businesses is a tool that's used across the world in many different languages and has great outcomes. You may have heard of it before. DISC.
Right, yes.
So DISC itself has a lot of detail and nuances in it, the actual tool. But there's some key fundamentals that we can talk about today that will really help with what we're looking to achieve, influencing and relationships and outcomes.
Sounds good. Sounds really valuable.
Great. So imagine an axis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on the right-hand side, the top right and the bottom right, we have what we're going to write as faster paced. On the left side now, more considered paced. Looking up the top, we'll call this task focused. And down the bottom, we'll call that people focused. So let's start to fill that out now.
Yeah.
So on our top right, we have behaviours that are represented best by the letter D. D standing for dominance.
Okay.
And now these types of behaviours, much like the example I shared with you before, Anoop, tend to be quite direct, results driven, can be fast paced, can be often seen in body language as well as communication as very confident and strong willed.
Yeah. So I guess as the two words suggest, they're fast paced and task focused or outcome focused.
Yeah, exactly. So the things with D's that I just want to highlight is their priorities are getting things done, getting results, taking action. D's often like to be perceived as being right all the time or as their idea. This doesn't make them good or bad. This is simply their way of preferred behaviour and how they get their outcomes and the job done.
So I imagine they're useful in a work environment?
Absolutely.
You want to get stuff done and get it done quickly?
Correct. Let me jump on that point now. All styles are useful.
Yes, great, thank you.
And a really key point to remember here, all styles can be effective leaders.
Okay, great.
So the other piece is that they're motivated by competition. You'll often see D-type preferences, and I'm talking about those with really high preference in a D, like really strong. Will often be the ones that are highly competitive, and they want to win, whether it be winning and success, whether it be faster, more effective, more streamlined, to get their outcomes. Yeah, and are motivated by power and authority. Again, it's not necessarily to the detriment of other people. It's because that's how they like to behave. That's their preference.
Right. Makes sense. Can relate to this type.
Yeah, okay. I think many can. So, just like that, the next one, let's move on to I. I stands for influence.
Right.
So the I behaviour can be described as action-focused, enthusiastic, quite collaborative, but really the key word is influencer. So an I influences through people.
Right.
So we talked about D being task and fast. I is fast and people.
So does that mean that they still achieve outcomes even though they're on the people side of the axis?
For sure. And remember, this has got nothing to do with your intelligence, your skill or knowledge. This is all to do with your preferred behaviour preference, how you prefer to behave and communicate. So to further describe an I-type behaviour, they tend to be outgoing, optimistic, can be quite social, charming. I's like to include, make sure others are included in part of the task, the journey, the focus, whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Right.
Their priorities are really around expressing enthusiasm, but remembering, just like D's, they're quite fast in getting the job done. So they want to take action. They want to do it now. An example I'll quickly share with you about an I is an I has a filing system that is quite vertical. Imagine smushing all of your paperwork together and piling it up, and they're like, I know it's in there somewhere.
Yes, okay, I've seen desks like that.
Yes. So I's are motivated by social recognition, group activities, involvement. You know, you're having a morning tea, remember to invite your I's, even if they're not part of your team. They want to know what's going on. It's that real FOMO.
Right.
Fear of missing out.
Right.
So moving across now to our left, we have S, which stands for steadiness. So the steadiness type behaviour is really about collaboration, support, stability. They tend to be, and I think first and foremost, amazing listeners. They really hear what people have to say as opposed to just listening. They're very calm, even-tempered, great team players. and very supportive. Primary S behaviour tends to not really like a lot of sudden change. So their priorities are around giving support and stability for others. S behaviour are really motivated by sincere appreciation. So we're now sitting on the more considered pace side, and people. So it's like the I, very people focused. So get jobs done through helping people or through utilising the support of others.
So what's the key difference there then between the I, the influencer, and the S, given they're both people focused?
It's around pace predominantly. So an S will be more likely to consider what's going on and think about who else needs to be involved and supported, and potentially take that additional time to follow up with other people. Whereas an I has potentially said what they've said and moved on to the next exciting thing.
Right. Okay.
So the last one in the top left is C, which stands for compliant. So the C-type behaviour can be described as needing accuracy. They're quite analytical in way of thinking and demonstrating in their work. Very precise and systematic. Generally quite reserved in nature. So like the D, task-focused. Like the S, more considered in pace. A C's priorities are usually around ensuring accuracy, so getting things right, challenging people's assumptions because potentially they've put the time and effort into making sure the information they've given you is correct in the first place. C's, just like S's, really prefer stability. They also like the opportunity to gain knowledge. They're constant learners.
Right.
And also value quality of output. So I think you probably, for those of you watching, have resonated with one of these styles.
Yeah, I can resonate to S in terms of steadiness, but I can also relate to some of the others. Is that normal?
Yeah, absolutely. So statistically, through the research that's been done through DISC, only 5% of us actually have one preference.
Right.
Having said that, we can all learn to flex and adapt. So we generally do display more than one.
So is the basic rule of thumb that I can adapt my style, and I guess is that a bit of the so what factor here as to the value that DISC can add?
So you should be able to adapt your style. What it comes down to, imagine a rubber band. It's sitting in its stagnant space. You can flex it and each different ways. What happens when it's under pressure or stress, so you pulled it too far, it'll actually snap back and revert to what we call style, which is under pressure or heightened excitement, so to speak. So we all have a preferred way. Having said that, we talked about why should we, once we understand our preferred way, why should we flex and adapt? Well, it's really around the influencing, getting the outcomes and maintaining and creating new relationships. So once you've understood your own style, you can then start to recognize styles in other people, how they prefer to behave.
Yeah. So if we use that example you gave us at the beginning of this session, so the person who comes in with their mobile phone, they're very fast-paced, obviously, they're a D, I think we can safely say.
Yes, I'd agree.
So if they were meeting with a different preference, the opportunity for them would be to adapt their style to suit the other preference. Is that the basic rule of thumb, or
yes.
do you match them in a different way?
Oh, that's fair as well. I think really what it comes down to is using emotional intelligence or your nuances, just looking at the environment you've walked into and going, what does this environment need? How does it need me to behave? Right. So if a D was going to have a one-on-one, for example, with someone that was quite reserved and shy or potentially needed time to know what the agenda or the conversation was about, then give them that information in advance.
So it's sounding like an S or a C, if they're meeting with an S or a C.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
All right, so I guess in summary, Zana, how do we apply this effectively?
Well, it's as we said in the beginning, take the time to understand yourself, understand others, and then flex and adapt your style to meet theirs.
Beautiful. Sounds good.
Thanks so much for having me.